Islamophobia in Canada is where we begin this week on the Sunday Scrum. The MP for Mississauga, Aaron Mills, introduced a motion in the House of Commons designed to fight religious discrimination, specifically mentioning Islamophobia in that motion. Urka Khalid then presented some of the hateful reactions she received in the House of Commons to the House of Commons. Take a listen.
Simply remind her that she is merely a woman and she needs to sit the blank down, kill her, and be done with it. We will burn down your mosques, Draperhead Muslim. Why don't you get out of my country? You're a disgusting piece of trash, you camel-humping terrorist incubator blank. Shoot this blank.
All right, let me show you the parts of the motion that are being questioned. All right, this is an excerpt. That in the opinion of the House, the government should, A, recognize the need to quell the increasing public climate of hate and fear, and B, condemn Islamophobia and all forms of systemic racism and religious discrimination. That's an excerpt from the motion with the germane parts. Now, some conservatives and members of the media say Motion 103 could threaten free speech, that essentially Islamophobia is too vague of a term, that it could mean fear of Islam or it could be taken to mean criticism of Islam or its prophets. So they want the word Islamophobia taken out of the text, but the Liberals are not budging. Is this a cynical, divisive tactic on the Conservatives' part, as MP Khalid says, or is it, as others have suggested, a cynical ploy on the Liberals' part to make the Conservatives look intolerant? Let's talk about it on Sunday Scrum today. Freelance columnist Susan Riley is here. Good morning to you, Susan.
Good morning, Carol.
The Globe and Mail's John Ibbotson, also in Ottawa. Good morning, John.
Hey, Carol.
And columnist and political commentator Marty Patriquin is in Montreal. Welcome to you, Marty.
Hi there.
Should the word Islamophobia be taken out of that motion? Marty, let me begin with you.
No, look, these types of motions are introduced to address an acute situation. And regardless of where, you know, there's all sorts of published information about the rise of Islamophobia across the world. I'm going to cite one, the SPLC, the Southern Poverty Law Center. A number of anti-Muslim hate groups increased from 34 in 2015 to 101 today. The number of attacks on Muslim properties, on mosques, as we saw the protests in front of Toronto. Yeah. This kind of stuff happens all the time. So again, it's to address an acute situation. The other thing I want to say about it, and I won't read the whole thing, but the Liberals passed introduced a similar motion in 2015 that talked about condemning anti-Semitism and a similarly worded motion, and it passed unanimously. It said an alarming increase in anti-Semitism worldwide. Now, it passed unanimously. Nobody made any bones about this. The fact is the elephant in the room is that it's the word Islam that is getting people all up in arms about this, but there's nothing unordinary about this motion.
Okay, Susan, let me ask you, do you agree with Marty that there's an acute situation that needs to be addressed? What do you think? Should Islamophobia stay in that motion?
In October, there is no qualms. A similar motion passed through the House in October, Islamophobia, and there wasn't a peep of protest from the Conservative backbench or anywhere else. Look, Islamophobia clearly means hatred and fear of Islam and, by extension, of Muslim people. If you want to know what Islamophobia is, what it looks like, take a look at any Twitter feed, take a look at social media, listen to what the MP from Mississauga, the insults that she has received.
Awful.
It's unmistakable. And I think the Conservatives are playing some Conservatives are playing a very dangerous game with this. They are, first of all, mischaracterizing what's going on as a law. It is not a law. What is being considered is a motion, and a motion has no legal weight whatsoever. Furthermore, the motion says, let's study this issue. This is a pressing issue of concern. There have been similar pressing issues, as Marty said, that come up once in a while, you know, about Yazidis, about anti-Semitic, you know, different minorities at different times are in the headlight. Okay. So this is in no way, first of all, silencing criticism of Islamic practices nor is it, nor is it sort of a creeping slope to Sharia laws.
Let me pop in here, because it's not just the Conservatives. Post media also saying it needs a clearer term in that motion so as not to give the impression that the motion doesn't bow down to the idea that any criticism of Islam will not be permitted. Again, over the confusion over what Islamophobia really means.
Patently
John.
absurd.
There's nothing in the motion at all that would lead anyone of goodwill to reach such a conclusion, including people in Post media. Look, people are demonstrating against Muslims at mosques. There was a horrible shooting of Muslims at a Quebec City mosque by allegedly a white supremacist. No one is protesting against Presbyterians right now. There's no need for a motion about protecting Presbyterians from hatred and discrimination. So the motion simply reflects the reality on the ground right now. Now, look, that said, I do believe the Liberals are probably making mischief as well. They know that there are divisions within the Conservative Party on this. It is often said that a political party is at its most vulnerable during a leadership campaign because the various wings of that political movement express themselves in candidates. And we're seeing that. We're seeing candidates showing up on Ezra Levant's vile program, The Rebel, allegedly fearing that they're subject to racial or religious discrimination. It's just garbage. I also worry about the fact that we have refugees coming across, claiming refugee status coming across the border. Some of them are Somali refugees. Donald Trump is stoking up all manner of hatreds and ills and evils, and some of that is going to cross the border. I think some of this debate is being contaminated by that Trumpism. So these are difficult and dangerous times. I wish the Liberals and the Conservatives could have come together and found a joint wording that both parties could have supported. I do believe, with goodwill on both parties' part, that motion could have been found. But it serves the political interests of both the Liberal Party and right now the Conservative Party to take these, I find, rather dangerous stands.
Yeah, but I don't think it's an equal. I agree that both of them are playing with it, but it's not equal. And I think what is most lamentable about this, and also I don't want to come off all high-handed and elitist and sneer at people who are concerned about Islam or refugees or anything else. There is some fear abroad. Some of it's stoked by Donald Trump, and there is, and it's mostly based in lack of information or the fact that a lot of the people who are the most afraid of, a Muslim invasion or takeover have never met a Muslim in their life necessarily. All you have to do is meet a few and realize that they're complex human beings like all the rest of us. So it's not from that perspective. I'm not criticizing that. What I'm criticizing is people specifically like Kelly Leach and Chris Alexander. Both of them experienced parliamentarians who know very well the difference between a motion and a law. Furthermore, in the case of both of them highly educated, better educated than I am, by the way, that they would be stoking this kind of fear, and they are.
Susan, let me play the clip to make your point. Susan, let me make the clip to make your point here, and then we'll come right back to you. Here's Kelly Leach speaking at that, what they call an emergency rally against this motion.
I'm going to borrow one of Ezra's favorite lines tonight that he uses. It's from the late Ralph Klein. It's great to be in a room of severely normal people tonight. We have a prime minister who calls us fringe? Really? There is nothing fringe about fighting for freedom of speech. Canadian values are not fringe, and together I know we're going to fight for them. Absolutely, fight for them. Vacations with billionaires, that's fringe.
Okay, Susan, I cut you in mid-flight, but her numbers are climbing to a recent poll. Is this not an issue that's going to attract people to her?
Is this not an issue, are you saying? You're saying that she's... Well, I don't know. First of all, I saw that. Well, I'm not so sure. Maybe she'll get all the kind of angry, bigoted people within the Conservative base on her side. I don't know if that's even enough to win the leadership, and it's certainly not enough to win the country. In any event, it's inexcusable. Whether it's a winning strategy or not, that's not how it should be judged. She's educated enough, she is smart enough to know that that she's pouring fuel onto smoldering ashes.
She's doing that on purpose, though.
I know, but it's totally irresponsible. And I think she's forfeited any right to hold public office, in my view.
Look, basically what the Conservative, the leadership campaign right now, they are appealing to about 100,000 people. I did a piece on Nick Kuvalis, who was her campaign manager and is apparently still volunteering for her. He did some polling of the Conservative membership. For the figures were basically this. They were basically the average age is 65, more than twice as likely to be white and male than the rest of the Canadian population. That is who you're appealing to right now. Those are the only people. Those are the only. I realize that, but proof is in the pudding. Look, she started this campaign as an also-ran. She was maybe dead last, if not second to last. She got propelled when she got on this Canadian values thing, and that's when she started winning, and she realized that. Look, Kuvalis is a guy who will literally do anything to win, and they picked this issue purposefully, because it works. Now, look, what you can do as a Kelly Leitch and pretend for a second that she does win this. She does this, and then she can sort of pivot off this issue and to ingratiate herself to the more mainstream. But right now, you're appealing to 65-year-old white males, and this is an issue amongst them apparently.
John? A lot of the people who've been welcoming Syrian refugees are 65-year-old white males.
John, let me hear from you.
The real decision here is whether the Conservative Party of Canada wants to remain Stephen Harper's party. A year ago, it was Stephen Harper's party. A year ago, if you polled the candidates who were running or thinking of running for the Conservative leadership, if you were at the Manning Centre conference in Ottawa, you saw a party that was united in holding the views that Stephen Harper held as its first and up to that point only permanent leader, which was strong fiscal conservatism, tax cuts, free trade agreements, deregulation, strong on law and order, on treating criminals as criminals, and so on. But nothing on the social side and nothing on the immigration side, other than we're more pro-immigration than the Liberals are. That's where the Conservative Party was when Stephen Harper left it. That's what got them to power for a decade. Is it still that party, or is it being captured by extremist elements? Is Kelly Leitch or Brad Trost, or it breaks my heart to say it, Chris Alexander, because he had so much promise, are they actually trying to troll the worst elements of the party and capture the party from that side? Or, for example, is it going to be Kevin O'Leary? Now, I have big problems with Kevin O'Leary as leader of the party, but his social positions are completely moderate, and he goes out of his way to say that on questions of women's rights, on questions of the rights of sexual minorities, on the questions of immigration, he's way over to the left of the party on that, and the party has to go there. This is a debate within the Conservative Party. We will have an answer, by the way, in May, and we'll know one way or another.
Yeah. Just one last question on this. We're out of time, but I want to get your sense of whether this part of the party is tapping into a small group that has racist tendencies, or whether there is a legitimate fear that is not being addressed properly by the government right now that they can take advantage of.
There is an illegitimate fear.
But I think that fear totally exists, and I think it's amplified by the fact of what I just said, just about because they're appealing to a subset of the population. That is to say, 100,000 Conservative Party members. Just on that point, and one of the things, of course, is like associating with the rebel and going on the Ezra Levant. Kelly Leitch talked about one of her favorite terms from Ralph Klein. Another word that Ezra Levant used that night. He said that Islam, the Muslims coming to this country are, quote, unintegratable. He said that in a speech. That's the eggs that they're putting their eggs in that basket, and then it's going to come back.
Can I just say briefly, Carol? I just want to say, in the name of balance, this is really a minority opinion. Contrast that to the many Canadian civilian groups who've been private sponsors for Syrian refugees, to the expressions of support across the country around mosques and whatnot, and also to the reality, the fact that the most recent mass shooting in Canadian history was conducted by a white Quebecois guy, not against Muslims. That the worst terrorist incident in Canadian history was the 1985 Air India bombing, which was conducted by Sikh extremists. So Muslim terrorism is not a thing here. It's simply not a thing. It is a thing in the world. It's not a thing here.
Muslim terrorism is not a thing here, but and I hate to be saying this right up against the commercial, Carol, but I am worried. I'm very worried about the fact that the inability or unwillingness of elites in the United States, in the coastal communities, and on the American equivalents of shows just like this show, their dismissal of the legitimate concerns of working class people, blue collar people,
100%.
to what they saw as issues of trade, issues of immigration, issues that they were not being listened to, led to the Trump poison. And my fear is that the same stopping up of the ears, the same dismissing of any concerns as anything other than racist or homophobic or sexist or stupid, uneducated, illiterate people who should just be shut down, could lead to the same kind of problems in this country. And and I worry, it bothers me.
Yeah, we've seen it before in a long time ago with the English Party in New Brunswick. They really popped up after Frank McKenna's second election, when basically people said bilingualism, you don't need to worry about your jobs, you're just an ignorant rube if you don't believe in bilingualism. And then all of a sudden, right around the Capitol, you had a number of seats go to this English-only speaking party. The party said that said, things like expulsions happen. So it has happened in this country on a smaller scale. I do want to talk about Justin Trudeau in this context coming up, because he seems to be sending the message out, I hear you, trying to articulate what some people who are following the populist path are actually worried about. So while the politics of division were playing out at home, the Prime Minister was pushing his vision of a harmony across the ocean. Justin Trudeau in Europe to celebrate the free trade agreement passing in the Euro Parliament, and commiserating with Angela Merkel on the death of the liberal international order. Maybe that's a stretch. And then he issued a stern warning and a challenge to proponents of global trade in defense of workers. Does the new free trade agreement line up with the promise of the most free and fair trade deal the world has ever seen? We'll talk about that coming up.